Hello, everyone. Welcome back from another session. So, here we have Banger Isaac Oni to talk about the compass becoming a holistic person. So, Mr. Banger, the stage is all yours. Please
Yes,
welcome.
thank you. Thank you, Han. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure having you join us this afternoon, this morning, this evening, this night, wherever you're joining us from. And also to send my appreciation first to the organizers of the International Conference on Transformative Education, the Global Transformative Education Movement, and for all of the other speakers that have spoken before me, because I've joined a lot of couple of sessions. And it looks like we are all in sync in terms of talking about global citizenship and in terms of global citizenship education. So it's going to be a pleasure for me this afternoon on my own time here. I'm presently in traveling, but I'm presently in Kampala, Uganda, East Africa. And so it's a pleasure for me to talk about this book, The Compass, Becoming a Holistic Person, and how for us just to navigate our life with purpose and resilience, especially in this era of technology advancement, but that also the core which this conference has been all about in terms of how do we advance a global thinking in terms of the awareness and well-being of people. I just left a session with Professor Maria from the Soka University, and she was resonating a lot of things that was written in this book, and also she is also one of those that forwarded the book. So let's just begin. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so our discussion flow for in the next supposed to be an hour conversation, but I'll make it less than an hour, so we'll leave room for questions and maybe just general comments from others that might want to share on it. And so the discussion of the flow, we're going to talk about what bettered this book, The Compass. Then we'll now look at the compass itself, which are the different parts of the book, which will have the three entrance, the north cardinal, like we know the compass has a four cardinal position, the north, the east, the south, the west. So this book is tailored towards that. And under each of the cardinal, we have some sessions that we're going to talk about, which is about how do we find our core and purpose, the growth and all of that. Then at the end, we'll leave room for question. Next slide, please. Now, so what bettered this book? So in 2020, during the pandemic, everybody was not down during the pandemic, and it was a concern about what's next. And so there's an organization called Standing for Greatness Foundation in Lagos, Nigeria. I am a board of trustee member, and so they'll be having the Future of Work Summit some couple of years before then. Every year is an annual event. So I was invited to speak to talk about the barriers and enabler in Africa in terms of future of work. And so I was just thinking, young people, we have COVID, we have young professionals, we have a lot of people, and due to my own life journey and the kind of things I've seen around, I said, okay, what can I speak on? And the concept of the compass just came to mind. And when that concept of the compass came to mind, I decided to say, okay, looking at each of these cardinals of the compass, what can I speak to the young people attending this summit at that time in terms of thinking about the future, but in terms of also helping them to navigate the COVID era. Then 4 years after, so after the presentation, almost everybody on the course said, no, you need to make it a book. You need to make it a guide that can guide both old and young people just even coming into the workforce. So I started doing it, but because of work and other engagement, I couldn't finish it. But this year, luckily, I was able to complete the process and we got it published. So that's the betting of the compass. It is during the Future of Work Summit in 2020. Next slide, please. Now, so the trade entrance, so this is the compass. If you look at the four cardinal point, it has all of those things that I was talking about, each of the north, the south, and all of that. And in the note here, it's talking that though the book is not about technology, but the issue of technology holding us accountable as a people drove a lot of the conversation that happened in the book. That how do we hold our own life accountable? How do we become transformative agents? How do we become people that really make impact in our community beyond just what we're seeing all over the world in terms of a lot of people growing from place to place, and after some time in their career or in their life, they know there's begin to be like a regret or, oh, have I really made impact? And so that's one of the things that drove the book. So we're going to dive deep to begin to talk a lot even about what are some of the session of the book. I'll just try to give snips here so that if to drive you to go get a copy for yourself so that you can dive deep to do that. But if there's one thing that was also done in the book is that after every chapter, there's a reflective page that gives writer to pause, reflect. What message are you getting from the book? What new lessons are you picking up, and what you need to share? So, because the goal of this book is that every person that read this book, you must share the knowledge that is in it. Whatever you have garnered from it, whatever you have learned from it, it's that responsibility for you to take it to others if it has blessed you. So the next slide, please. Now, this picture, there are these two guys here, these two people here. The question will be that would the compass have helped them? So on the top of the page is Amanda Ella. For those of us that can recall, in 2019, she was a world celebrated case that was both on CNN and all world media because she got lost. The second person down is myself, and I'm going to talk about the story of these two people to see how, what if they had used the compass, they would have been helped. So Amanda Ella, in 2019, she went to the Hawaii forest in the Hawaii region. So she went there. She usually, it's a tradition, she goes there to hike and all of that. So she parked her car. But after parking her car, she locked the door, but left her phone and everything in the car. So she started hiking. She got to some point, she got tired. She sat down just to regain her energy. And when she stood up and started walking, she missed her direction. That's simpler place of just sitting and standing up and with no navigation. She said, oh, I can find my way back to my car. It took her 17 days. She was lost in the forest. Even the searchers were about giving up on the search. And so the question that came to me when I saw this was that, what if Amanda had a compass with her? What if Amanda had a compass with her? It would have guided her back to her car. The same, the down story there is me when I was working in the agricultural sector somewhere in Nigeria, in Plateau State. So we went out there to check our project, and I went to do something. Before I'll come back, our colleagues were gone. And so I started looking out for them. But this picture is not the day of the incident. This is just the fun part of it in an onions farm. But I started looking out for them. It took me 20, 30 minutes. I could not find them. I was so worried. I was concerned with even all of the insecurity issues and all of things happening. Here am I lost in the bush. I can't find my direction because my wallet, my phone, and everything is in the car. So the same question was, would the compass have helped myself and Amanda? And the simple answer is a yes. And so let's bring that back to our life in this journey of transformation, in this journey of, even for educators that are on this call, in this journey of you helping your student and also helping yourself. What is the compass that we can use to guide our life? What is the compass that will know Amanda would not have used 17 days and almost dying? I want you to go back, just read up about Amanda. It's such a fascinating story. And also, if you get a copy of the book, you see more about it. What if Gbenga has had his phone with him? He would have easily located his colleagues and not be stranded for hours. And so that's the betting of the idea that a compass is to guide us to the right direction, is to guide us when we are lost, is to guide us to where we are supposed to be. Next slide, please. Now, the North Cardinal. So the North Cardinal point here, when people tell you, find your true north. So the goal of the book then in using the North Cardinal was to talk that, how do we find our true north? Every time people say it, when people go for maybe career counseling and all of that, they say, oh, find your true north. And so when we embark on a journey to find our true north, we seek not just our place in life, but a pivotal position or platform to launch our personal growth. And so the idea, the book was saying that when we say find your true north, we're not just saying just find a position that makes you influential in society or just accumulate wealth. Is that, where is your true position? Every one of us has a true position. How do we find it? And that's that beautiful picture that I took in Zanzibar, looking at how the ship, they move, or the boats and all of that moving across the water. Each of them has a direction where they're going to. So now let's dive. There are two things that we're going to cover under the North Cardinal. One is finding your core. We didn't say purpose, but you can also use it purpose. But we said finding your core and growth. How do you track your growth? So now let's talk about the core, what the book talked about, the core. Next slide, please. So in terms of the core, and so there is a quote here that is made from the scripture. It said, arise and go into the city, and it shall be told you what you must do. So it means that for us to help young people, for us to help them, they need mentors, they need people to guide them, they need people to help them to be able to find their core and their purpose. So in this chapter of the book, we dive deep into a lot of process, how people can find their core and purpose, because our core and purpose is not our career. And if we want to have transformative generation, if we want to have this idea of global citizenship, then it means that every citizen here on earth must know what is their core. And so towards the end of the book, we had some questions that was given that to help readers process how do they find their core. What is a better life? What does a better life means to them? And for a lot of people that have been attending this conference and a lot of people watching over, their development workers, they're people that have sacrificed their life, that have made the purpose to bring about change in the society. So the question will be that what is better life? Is better life just creating 4 to 500 companies and making billions and thousands of dollars? But what does it mean? Does it translate to having impact in people's life? Then we also talked about what are the values that drive you. We're beginning to say for us to have transformative leaders, for us to have people, there must be value-based leadership, because we have a lot of leadership in the world, but there are no values that guide. And so at that point, people are given opportunity to look at what are the values that guide them. Then what is your life calling you, or the purpose that we talk about? And there's also a question at that page. I have to say, how will you measure your life? And the question is that what at the end of your journey, at the end of your time in a particular, what will you use to measure your life? Then at the point, people are called to create an image that represents themselves. When they see this image, it reminds them what is their life. So you see under the slide there, we have what's called likeness, commitment, and metrics. So it is it's one of the Christian Clinton. He was a professor at Harvard Business School. He's late now. He developed a concept on how people can find their purpose or their core. He called it likeness, commitment, and metrics. So in terms of the likeness, what you need to do is that you need to imagine from the beginning, what will your life look like towards the end? Nobody wants to look their life having scandal at the end. Well, nobody wants to look their life not having any impact. You need to start thinking it. But when you live likeness, you need to go to commitment. Don't just write 5 years ago, 10 years ago. You need to show commitment to implement it. Then the question will be, what is the metric for your life? And here, when we talk about the metric for the life, we're not talking about the quantitative metrics alone. We're talking about the quality kind of life you want to live. Is it just about money? Yes, there are a lot of people that have money, but at the end of the day, they live in dysfunctional homes. And so that's what he was talking about that. And when we go to the next place, when we talk about growth, I'll talk a little bit about that. So that's just the random summary of that chapter. Is helping the reader, for those that have discovered their core or in life or their purpose, to reflect again and see, do they have a metrics to get it? Are they committed enough to achieve that? Next slide, please. So in growth, so under the growth, people talk about growth. So growth measurement. So in this chapter, that picture there is a beautiful picture drawn by a young Indian lady that she gifted my wife. So I love the picture. I picked it and I wrote a couple of things. This is growth. This is somebody watering themselves and they're growing. And so based on the work I've done around development, economics and development research and all of that, I also came up with how do you measure your growth in that chapter, which is called the growth ladder. Before I talk about the growth ladder, but one of the things that the chapter was focusing on or was emphasizing on was the need for us to learn to process information based on our value. Remember in chapter 1, we talked about you need to have value. If you don't have value, then how do you process information? Then we talked about asking questions. I was just leaving Dr. Maria's session when she was talking about the resonance of the global resonance. And she was talking also about the importance of asking questions, because in dialogue, when people talk about global dialogue, they begin to think only thinking is about speaking, but you need to develop asking question skills, and so that you begin to ask the relevant questions. But sometimes when you even ask those questions, you might not get the answer, but it begins to make you to think deep. Then we now talked about growth measurement. How do you measure your growth? So this growth measurement ladder has 5 steps. I'm just going to quickly run through it for just our understanding. So is that one, the core. This is the beginning of the ladder. You must at every point be sure of what is your core. If somebody meets you on the street, meets you on the way, Gbenga, why are you here? Or it says, oh, Tosi, why are you here? Or it says, Janet, or it says, Gloria, why are you here? You need to know your core. And so once you know your core, once you grow it, once you read more in the book, we have a lot of steps for you to do that. Then we talked about connections. And here, connections here, we said there are people that they know 1,000 people. If you ask them to bring 1,000 people today, they can provide them, but they are not connected. We're talking about quality connections. What are those people? How are they influencing you to achieve your core? Not just having 5,000 connections on social media or a million. People don't pay to even have those connections, but that's not what we're talking about, or those 1 million. But who are the quality connections in your life that can hold you accountable, that can help you to become achieving your core? Then the middle point of it is what we call the commitment, which is also called the valley of death. Because most times, a lot of people get towards the connection, they don't go to the commitment. So two things can either happen. It's either you move from the commitment to the conviction, or you fall back again to the beginning, not knowing. But so at that commitment level, that is where you begin to see what are those things you need to put in order for you to be able to achieve your call, in order for you to be able to go towards the rising star that is shining there. And once you get your commitment, you are convinced. And that's why you see a lot of people that are in development, which I believe almost everybody on this call, they've gotten to that point of conviction that nobody else can move you. And so when people say, oh, I'm not doing this just because of the money, then you know that they mean it. A lot of them mean it because they have gotten to the point of conviction. In the book, we talked about a lot of steps. How do you get into that conviction? Then when you get to the point of conviction, you move to the point of care. You begin to care genuinely about people, not about what you get from them. So if you're growing in your career progression, you work with people, you have staffs and all of that, you only do things with people because you need things from them, then you are not growing. So how do you measure your growth? How do you know you are growing in your career? How do you know you are growing in your life, in your destiny and your purpose? What the book is saying, how do you know that you're becoming a global citizen? Is when you begin to care genuinely about the earth, genuinely to care genuinely about people around you, and you genuinely continue to care about those uh, closer to you, then you know that you are moving towards that point. So I will encourage you to get a book, look at that ladder, and the ladder can help you to track any growth in any place of your life. But the ultimate goal of the ladder is that you should always be at the care level. You should always be at the care level. But if you must fall down, remain at the conviction. Don't go below the commitment level. You must put in that work and that commitment to do that. So that's that with the North Cardinal. So in the North Cardinal, we had two chapters. It discussed what is your purpose and also what is your growth. And like the coach here said, never confuse movement for growth. So a lot of people, sometimes they get so high even in their career life when they are top of their career, they begin to say, what am I doing? When they try to analyze their growth level, I told you about Clinton. He shared a beautiful story that I think I should share with you in his book, How Do You Measure Your Life? He talked about how he was tracking their school year reunion. The first year, after 5 years of reunion from Harvard Business School, a lot of people came. After 15 years, after 10 years, the attendance began to reduce because the things of life began to choke guys. A lot of guys went into hedge fund. They were making money, but they were not having a life. They could not talk about, their family, their friends, their relative could not track them because the question was that a lot of them picked this career path. So let me quickly make money, then I will come back to do what is important. But what the compass is saying that no, pick what is important, then you can fit into any career. Don't go and pick what is important because it doesn't work the other way around and you get into a lot of problems. So if we must have global citizenship, then we must push towards that level. Next slide, please. Now we are going to go towards the east cardinal. So one of the things we do, when we talk about east, there's a general belief that the sun rises from the east. It shines towards that direction, but it's due east. Though the sun rises due east, we're not going to go into the geography part of it or the engineering or science part of it. But what we're saying is, at that point, is that you as a person, you as a global citizen, need to look towards the east cardinal of your life. And so there are two decisive actions that can help us go east. And we talked about it, is that being a thinker and avoiding the social media trap. So by actively engaging in this action, you can use them as a tool to navigate your path towards personal growth. Now we've talked about the core, we've talked about growth, determination. Now let's look at the things under the east cardinal. Next slide, please. Being a thinker. I know with the advent of technology, we are beginning to think less. Because now if you have a troubling scenario or a troubling problem you want to resolve, the first thing that comes to your mind is you remember Google. No, Google is out there for me. You just type it in. And over, creative and solution thinking process is reducing, even in our education. We are beginning to have citizens that don't process information, that don't even take time to challenge what they read over the news, because when they just Google it out or it's flown through a WhatsApp group, they believe it. And so what the chapter was talking about is that we should not outsource our thinking. And if you look at, so one of the research that we picked in the book talking about was, if you look at one of the things that happened with the West was, at some point, companies wanted to make a lot of profit. They started outsourcing a lot of stuff to at the east, and before no happened, most of the production took away from the west. And we know a lot of political conversation happened in the west now that, oh, we need our jobs back, we need everything out. But that was the danger of outsourcing without thinking. And so if we bring this to our own life too, it's okay to help ask Google to help you, use AI to help you. Like we've talked about a lot of session during this conference, I talked about AI, that AI should be like a servant, but not one that controls us. But a lot of people think that we're going to outsource all of our deeds, all of our ability to think. And the difference between humans and other animals and species is that creative ability for us to be able to think. So the invitation is that thinking is part of our life and part of our growth. For us to be global citizens that think, for us to, to be transformative leaders, you must learn to think, process things, take time to think. And also in the book, we talk about the thinking process. We used the bonus thinking cap process to break it down, and we'll give a couple of assignments for people to read. So the invitation is for you, please get it, go into the book, it will dive deep and it will help you to look about it. Then we talk about, for us, we also talk about the issue of be careful of conviction and boundaries. Because sometimes, you remember, we talk about convictions in the ladder, but conviction can also become harmful if you're overhead to your conviction. Because sometimes some conviction, you need to keep processing them. You need to be open to learn new things. I love one of the story that Trevor Noah shared, the former host of the Daily Wire show, the South African person. He talked about his experience using a seatbelt in the plane. And so most times, due to the way he practices, he uses his seatbelt always. And so sometimes he forgets when the plane lands, and so it's time to get up. He tries to go up and it pulls him back. And so the lesson there is that sometimes you become so convinced about something that is pulling you back. So the invitation was, what are those things you are convinced of, but they're also keeping you back from moving forward. So learn to leave some of your conviction in and loosely. But also talk about boundary using the work of a couple of social philosophers, and in terms of knowing how do you set the right boundary, how do you know what to do, like Avant Grant and the rest of them. Then we left in this chapter, we left what is called a thinking strategy. It's called HARD. The thinking strategy is called HARD. You need to have an open plan on how to fix things, an open plan about whatever things you are processing. I was in the conversation about people talking about nationality and global citizenship. And so there was this ongoing debate, which we're seeing in the West, about people saying, no, our nation's first, but forgetting that even in our nation, we have several identities. And so there's this ongoing debate and infighting happening with us. So the question is that you need to have an open plan. Then the next under the heart is, for you to think rightly, you must avoid the danger of a single story. Before you conclude, try to hear from every side, try to get more information. And we have suffering of this in this global, everybody wants their own story to be right, but there is a danger of a single story because it generalizes people and it also affects your thinking. So, but by the time you see people from other tribes or from other places, even within your, you begin to think about them because you've heard one story about somebody from that tribe behave this way, and you begin to think, well, that is how they all behave. So you need to avoid the danger of single story. Then you must develop your question skills. We've talked about that. I'm not going to talk about that a lot. So that is about being a thinker. So it went deep and gave us different strategy for us to be a thinker. So if you must become a holistic person that is complete, a global citizen, then you must be a thinker. Don't outsource your thinking ability. Next slide, please. Social media. I won't talk a lot about social media. Social media is a good tool, but John Eldridge said something, said, we are all becoming a disciple of the internet. And so because the internet is discipling us, so the question is, how is the internet shaping you? How is the internet shaping you? And so we try to bring the concept of discipleship is about being yoked to something. And until you surrender to your discipler, they cannot disciple you. So it means that you need to be careful not to surrender yourself to the internet. You need to have a plan and all of that. And so there's a couple of stories and example that was talk about how the social media, even people developing the algorithm, they're doing it to trap people. They're doing it to make people addicted. So some people will talk about what is called the leaks, which is like the like, the comment, and the share syndrome. So there's a lot of people that are suffering from that syndrome. So the goal and the invitation is that you must be careful. If you post something and people do not like it, how do you feel? Is it affecting you psychologically? If people do not comment on what you have, how is it going to you then if you do not share? So the like and share syndrome can be a trap if you don't know. Forgetting that even now, even people that develop social media algorithm, if somebody likes your page without using the love like, sometimes it doesn't share because they're all also about marketing strategy and all that. And I think a lot of part of this session I've talked about it during this conference. I will not dive into it, but in the book, the invitation was to be careful and not be trapped through the like and share syndrome. And the final part of it, we talked about making your social media experience a co-creation space. How many of you that you don't need to have account on every social media, but it's good before you have an account on any social media platform, ask yourself, is this space going to be a co-creation space between me and the people that created this space? So it means that, are you sharing knowledge? Are you providing help to people? Are you also, the other one, are you providing hope? The same thing also for you is social media usage for you giving you knowledge? Is it helping you? And is it providing hope? If it's not doing these three things for you, then you can quite just excuse yourself from the space. Then the next thing that this chapter invited every global citizen to do is you must have how to analyze news. You don't believe everything you read on any news channel. And so we left some tricks, some techniques to help people on how to analyze news. Trust me, when you go through that, once you know how to analyze news, you will have less depression reading the news or watching the news, less anxiety turning on your TV to listen to news broadcasts. And so that's what was covered under that. Social media is great, but we must avoid the trap and not be trapped by the like or the leaks syndrome. Next slide, please. Now we know we have left the North Cardinal. We have gone to the East Cardinal, now in the South Cardinal. So the question says don't go south, but let's be apolitical in terms of saying don't go south. So the invitation, when you say a deal or a proposal has gone south, it means it has failed, it did not work. And so this is a quote from C.S. Lewis. And I talked about, I said, we do not want merely to see beauty. We want something else which can hardly be put in words, to be united with the beauty we see, to pass into us, to receive it into ourselves, and to what? To batch it into us, to become a part of us. So the invitation here is for us to connect with our inner self, to begin to continue, which I said, I love a lot of sessions I've attended, even during this conference. It begins to reemphasize what we've been saying. Yep. Next slide, please. Now, there are three things that we talked about under this session is that be a seed. There's a part of, from the scripture, the Ecclesiastes says, cast your bread upon the water, and in many days you'll find it. It means that you need to plant something, you're going to find it. So I have an agricultural background in part of my life, so I understand the agricultural process and all of that. So looking at this, the invitation that you need to see your life as a seed. If you look at this crop here, this is how seed grow. If you look at it at every stage, when you plant a seed, they are growing. But unfortunately, if a lot of global citizens or even young people that are in our class do not see their lives as seed, they're in a hurry. And you can see that maybe in some part of the world, Asia and Africa, and even in the West, begin to have a lot of young people getting in internet fraud activities because they're not seeing their life as a seed. They're in a hurry, and because they don't know the purpose of what they are, they're in a hurry to become what they are not supposed to be. So we're seeing a lot of crime, a lot of even people going into terrorism and all of that is people not seeing themselves as though there are other things involved in it, but it could be a likelihood because they've not seen themselves as a seed. So the invitation in this chapter is for you to see that at every stage of your life, there is growth taking place, and you need to be patient. You need to understand that it is not going to be an overnight thing. So you need to see yourself there. And in the chapter, we talked about using the potato processing to say that the size of your field does not determine your yield, because there are other things you need to do. You might have a big farm land, but if you don't follow the right process, you don't plant the right seed, you don't apply the right agricultural practices, clearing weed and all of that, you will still have a low yield. And so here too, it doesn't mean the number of connections you have, you might not make meaningful impact or become a global transformative leader. So that's one of the things we shared that. So the next slide, please. So in this chapter, we talked about spirituality. And spirituality, I want to read something for you from the book, because when we talk about spirituality, we're not talking about religion. And so there is a part from the book that by Dr. Maya Spencer of the Royal College of Psychiatry. So she said, spirituality involves the recognition of a feeling or a sense or belief that there is something greater than myself, something more to being human than sensory experience, that the greater whole of which are part of cosmic or divine nature. So that is an invitation for us to begin to see that we are interconnected. We are called to something greater than us. We are called to do that. So remember that again, we talked about growth already. That's why I jumped in. And so the invitation here is for us in spirituality to begin to connect for us. So there's a chapter or there's a paragraph in the book that talks a case for God. And when we're talking about the case of God, we're saying, we've divided the world, especially if you're from the US or from any part of the world. People see the left, the right, or the US sees Democrat or Republican. But no, if you look at the way nature is designed, we're supposed to work together. We're supposed to be what is called conservative radicals. And what is conservative radical? It means that we need to conserve values that are good. We're talking about conserving the earth, conserving the environment, and we need to be radicals in changing things like gender-based violence, things that abuses children, molestation, orphans out with no help and all of that. No, all of poverty, we need to be radical in terms of eradicating poverty. But there are good values that we have in society, like love, care, like no peace and no creativity. Those are good things we need to conserve. So making a case for God means that nature itself has built us to be conservative radical, but not saying, oh, I am the right, I am the left, I am a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm whatever name of the party in your country. No, it's that invitation to meet in the middle. And one of the other chapter there on that speech saying that protest isn't always a solution. People think, no, we need to always protest, we need to always go to the street. No, what we need to begin to have constructive conversation. You can have your view, but let's sit down and find solution. Because if we look at all of the big protests we have ever had, Me Too, Black Lives Matters, the Green Revolution, or different, they are not yielding the kind of result. If we talk about the Arab Spring, we go back to the Middle East, there's still a lot of things. So it means it is important for us to begin to what are other ways that we can bring change. Because we've tried all of these other protests, but a lot of the protests, 80% of the time, have not yielded what we went at. We say, well, it started the conversation, but after the protest, what next? And that is connecting to ourselves. So in the book, in this chapter, we picked some lesson from sports psychology. Because in sports psychology, they have the PPR, which is you prepare, you perform, you recover. So in our spirituality, how do we prepare, which is about well-being? How do we connect to ourselves? How do we do that? And there is a quote that ended that chapter, which I think, let me see if I can read it for us. So the poem is by Martha Poswete. She said, I think a lot of us might have heard about the quote before from her book, Addiction and Recovery. He said, do not try to save the whole world and do not do anything grandiose. Instead, create a clearing in the dense forest of your life and wait there patiently until the song that is in your life falls into your own cupped hands and you recognize and greet it. Only then will you know how to give yourself to this world so worthy of rescue. And so it's also an invitation not to be in a hurry, for us to be patient, to be able to understand what are those things that we can do. Everybody's, especially for young people, for those of us that work with young people, we need to remind them there is time. They should breathe in this fast-paced life that the society is calling them into. If we become global citizens, if they become transformative education, it takes time. So we need to prepare, perform, recover, then go back again, following each of those process. Next, please. Rest. You see this goat. There's a famous story. I don't know how many of us on this call or how many of us will listen later. We've heard about the story, the missing goat. People have used it in different fashion. So there was a story of some young student in a school. They wanted to play a prank on their school leadership. So they got 3 goats, but they labeled it 1, 2, and 4. So they released the goat into their school compound. So these goats were moving around. They littered everywhere. So in the morning, when the head principal came, they saw goat litters everywhere. So the whole school was smelling of the goat litter. So no, we need to look for this goat. So they started picking the goats one after the other. So do you know what happened? They were able to see 3 goats, but there was a problem. They saw one written number 1, one written number 2, one written number 4. So the principal said, we must look for goat number 3. They search and search and search. Maybe next year, after 500 years of the legend of this story, they will find a goat. Nobody saw goat number 3. But because the boys wanted to play prank on the school. And so what we're saying is that a lot of us are looking for this elusive goat number 3 in our lives. When we're chasing and running everywhere, you're looking for goat number 3. So the invitation on this page is that Are you looking for a goal that is not existing? Are you looking for a goal that is nowhere? And so you must rest. You must rest and stop looking for a goat that is not missing. AI is coming, people are panicking. AI is going to do this. Can you rest? Is no, train yourself, learn new technology, but don't panic. Can you come to a point of rest? So in the chapter, we dropped a rest plan. So using the word rest, one, reinventing. You must learn to take some sabbatical, take some point, even as a teacher, as a technologist, as a rest, reinvent. And AI is inviting us to reinvent. You can use the opportunity for you to reinvent a lot of stuff in your life. Then you must know what is enough in your life. I'm going to talk about enough under when we get to the place of choices. We'll talk about enough. Then learn to slow down. Don't always be in a hurry. Learn to slow down. And slowness does not mean you stop working. Slowness means sometimes you shut down mentally. It's a practice that once you get into it, people will think you are not serious, even at work or everything, but you know what you're doing. Learn to slow down your brain, learn to slow down your metabolism, learn to breathe in. You know, after every session during this conference, you always see they say, take a walk, take water, do some exercise, learn to slow down. Then take time out. In sport, in basketball, and all of that, when they're playing, they do time out. You must have a timeout for your life. Don't run. Don't be the people, we are in a generation that people say, oh, I read 50 books in a year. But after reading the 50 book, what have you learned from those 50 books? We must learn to slow down. We must learn to take time out. You are not needed everywhere. Now, usually it wonders when people say, oh, I read a lot of books. I say, okay, let's talk about one of the books. So in one of the chapters in the book, the invitation that I gave was that even though it's one book you read in a year, understand why the author wrote this book. Interact with it. Try to pick out something from it. The same thing, even tell your student. And one of the things I learned from my elder brother and those as a student said, when your teacher leaves the class, one of the way, because he is a genius, and I give him that, he said, when your teacher leaves the class, don't run away. Sit some few minutes, go through all of the notes that you've learned that day. Practice, ask questions. What do I need to go and research more in the library? What do I need to do? That was his practice. I wasn't as faithful as him, but I saw that it was helpful because when exam comes, most times when I'm not able to cover almost everything, I remember that techniques because I slowed down. I took time to go through everything that was learned that day before I go out to play or join other people. It comes to me like a light bulb. And it could be a practice we can do with our life. Learn to slow down. Every evening when you close from work or when you're done with it, can you process your day? Can you slow down? And it also helps with anxiety, and it also helps with just being free and all of that. Next slide, please. Now, the west point. The west cardinal point means that it's an invitation for you to go west, but I'm not saying west in terms of Western country. No, that's not what it's saying. West in terms of the cardinal point and all of that. Martin Luther King Jr. said something. He said, in life, for me, isn't being no crystal stair. Life for none of us has been a crystal stair. But there is something we can learn from the broken grammar of that mother that must keep moving. He said, this is where the famous thing came from. He said, if you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means necessary, keep moving. And that's why you need to do that. You just need to keep what? Moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. Now, let's see what are the things under the West cardinal point. Yes? Don't worry, we're about coming to the end so that you can ask your questions. We're getting towards the point. Next slide, please. And yes, attitude. Attitude. Timely advice is lovely, like a golden apple in a silver basket. To the one who listens, valid criticism is like a golden earring or other gold jewelry. That was what King Solomon, the famous King Solomon, said in his work in the book of Proverbs. And so, do you value feedback? He said, for those that listen, we keep hearing about the issue of listening from every, most of the three different posts I've gone is that it's ability for us to learn to listen. Don't build a victim mindset. Unfortunately, for us as educators here, it's an invitation for you to help your students in your class. We're beginning to have a generation that everybody wants to be a victim. Don't build a victim mindset. And so in this chapter of the book, we try to help young people or adult or whoever is reading it, no matter where you are in your career journey, not to build a victim mindset. Yes, there are times that we are quite victims of a situation, but we need to ask ourselves, what can we do? What can we pick from it to become better? Mindset shift. Then you must see feedback as golden. And so feedback, like I let people use feedback as as a filter. Filter it. Pick those things that are good. Sometimes some things are said that are not good, you know, even from friends, family, wife, relative. They say things, but just remember that we are not perfect. We don't all know everything. We all have a blind spot. Sometimes people see things that you do not see, and so you must know that. That's how you build the right attitude in life. And as educators, we must help these young people see that. Then build resilience. Resilience is very important, and that's one of the things we speak during the COVID period. A lot of people that build resilience, it helps, and especially assertiveness and resilience are things that we must help young people to understand that being assertive does not also mean you build resilience in things. So once you go into the book, we talk a lot about it. Then we talk about the cost of competing. We've created a generation or a system that everybody wants to win award. You see different awards this weekend, Grammy and all of that. They are wonderful, they are great, but all of that. And the question is that we need to begin to re-examine. Sometimes even because the people that are against award, on the other side, they're also making it worse. In a school, they say, no, we don't need to give award to any student. Everybody take an award. But that's also problematic. Do we need to find a better way to do it? But for you to, do you have a tendency to, you want to always win? You always want to be right. It can be a cost, can be a burden. You will learn not to have people. Sometimes you know you are right, but you might just listen to do that. So it's what we need to do. Then you need to genuinely serve people. Building the right attitude means you need to learn how to begin to serve. Next slide, please. Yes, I think this is the second to the last in terms of the book. Then we'll talk about the last part of it. Then you can start asking your question. Balance. You need to find balance. You need to find balance. So in balance, he said the only way to achieve balance is to live for only one thing. And that's what we talked about purpose in the beginning when we started this thing. What is your core? Not what is your career. You need to know what is your core. If you live for only that one purpose, then you find balance. And in balance, in the chapter in the book, we talked about the place of conflict and creativity. We're beginning to have a place that people are running away from conflict, but conflict can be a point to create a creative solution. So there we dive deep on how do you use conflict as a pivoting point for creativity, and a lot of research out there that support that. Then the chapter also left us with life's anchor, four of it, that can help us receive balance. The first is love. We talk about the concept of love. How do people talk about love? The truth is that if we're more loving, then there'll be less hate in the world. If we're more loving, there'll be less corruption in government system. If we are more loving, then there'll be less trouble. No people, no doctors or practitioners, professionals not putting that extra mile to help their clients. Then the concept of time. Unfortunately, of all the creation on earth, it's only human that is caused with the issue of time. But will you come to a point that you live outside of 24 hours? 24 hours do not govern you or control you to see what you're doing. And that's what we're saying. If you read it there, and so one of my alma mater, the book, The Timekeeper, Michi, we went to the same school at Brandeis. He wrote a very powerful book many years ago, talk about time. I think that's one of the good concepts about time. If you can't read that book, how you can live outside of time but still be cautious of your 24 hours. Then people, how do you genuinely serve? We talk about serving people. People that are the greatest things that you ever have. How do you honor them? How do you live with them? Then learning do not end, which comes back to the issue of the book that I was talking. Yes, you can read every book you see, but what are you learning from them? Do you divert to them? For some of us that are marginalists, every book that I get, I read. Even me, I wrote this book, but I read it. You can see all my markers on my page. I read it because there's a sequel to the book. And the more I kept reading it, the more I said, maybe this would have gone this way. Maybe that would have been there. So learn to read and dive deep. And I've learned a lot from it myself. Even after reading it, I have learned a lot from the book. So learning is a lifelong thing. When you stop learning, then you're out. Your space and time has gone. The last one, choices. Next slide. Choices. Kofi Annan said, to live is to choose, but to choose where, you must know who you are and what you stand for, where you want to go, and why you want to get there. Again, goes back to the call in chapter 1 that we do. What are you choosing? So, three quick things that do you know you're enough? There's a story that I shared in the book about Gupta. I don't know how many of us know about Gupta. Was the former CEO of McKinsey, and he was very privileged guy. His story is online, to be the first non-American born CEO of this global company and all of that. So he wrote, when he retired, he was valued at $100 million then. He became a UN ambassador, was doing a lot of things, but he was sitting on the board of many organizations. But there was an observation that was made by one billionaire in that board. He said, this young man, I always see him that he's not satisfied to being a millionaire, but that isn't the problem. The problem is that is the path that he's taking. He's going to get into trouble. Then fast forward, during the economic meltdown in 2008, Goldman Sachs was allegedly about to crash. Then Warren Buffett, he was sitting in a meeting that Warren Buffett decided that he was going to put in money to save Goldman Sachs. He heard it and he called his friend to invest in Goldman Sachs stock. They invested in the stock and he made 17 million. They made $17 million out of the stock, because the next day that guy bought a lot of stock, and the next day Warren Buffett saved Goldman Sachs. But the question is that was a clear case for the Secret Service and FCC, and they investigated. His friend confessed, well, I got this information from Gupta, and Gupta was sentenced to prison. Since the day he came back from prison, he has been trying up to now to redeem his image, but he destroyed an illustrious career because he does not know enough. If you read the book Psychology of Money, he was talking about that everybody there, you need to know what is your enough in life. Once you don't know what is your enough, you will surely get into scandal, financial crisis, not just about money. It could be even attitudinal issue. So what is your enough? That was what that page was talking. Then you need to develop your choice making skills. Making choice is not easy. You need to do it. Trust me, especially in this generation. Then the last part of it, you see about choices. We talk about, are you making choices that the next generation will benefit from? How many of us, I don't know if you have heard about the letter from the Cathedral of Milan, written by an author when he went to Milan and he was in the cathedral and he saw that magnificent cathedral. Then he wrote a letter back to his staff in DC. And what was the lesson from there? That cathedrals are built generation after generation. The Cathedral of Milan was built for 500 years. Everybody that built that cathedral were not alive when it was commissioned, but they never stopped. So when you're pursuing as an educator, some of your students, you will never know what they will become. As an entrepreneur or as a doctor, a lot of your patients, are you working for the next generation? I've gone to different, I was at the cathedral at Canterbury and I saw that the men and women that were here before us were wiser and bigger than us. No, it took a lot of effort, but they're not here to see it, but they were committed to do it. So what are you committed to doing? Next slide, please. So the exit tray, we add the tray entrance. We'll talk about it. So at the end of the book, we had a place, and like I told you, each chapter of the book has a page that makes every reader reflect on what you have read. You reflect on what you have read, and you write out some portion to it. What are you learning from the book? What is the book? What is the chapter calling you to do? What is in the invitation from the chapter for you to do? And so you do that. And in each of those cards now, you have what is called the reflection board, where you think what you are going to do. Then what are you going to share with others? What are you going to keep for yourself? What do you need to change? Then at the end, we have a map. When you read this book is going to equip you with a map to go. And we divide this go forward map into 4. What is your core? What will your family say at your gravesite when you're no more? What will your friends say? Then the system where you work. We do not say company, it could be any place you ever find. Everywhere you have ever worked in your life or you will work, what will they say about you? Once you have all of those go full map, then you are ready to make those life choices. So that is that about the compass. I would really invite you to go get it and just dive deep into it, and you go out with this exit tray map. Next page, please. Yeah, these are some of the review about the book that was given by various people. So you can see that and all of that. Then I think that will be that. The next page will be a thank you for coming, and opportunity for us to use the next 10 minutes to ask a question. Yeah. And so there's also going to be a follow-up of the book that might come out in 2025 called The Anchor, that will dive deep and all of that. And so if you ever on this call, you've read the book and you want to talk about it at any point, please reach out. We'll talk about it and we could use that to build the anchor. So back to you, Anne, for questions. Okay. So there's a question from Kyochi Duran from Peru. So what do you think would be the best way to approach students into becoming holistic people? I think for me, one of the way for them is to model, for teachers to model to them. And so because if we model, because especially with this generation of tech and all of that, we need to model the life, we need to do them. And we need to also bring live case studies, because I know the job of a teacher is not easy, because most times they spend just some time with you, but they go back home to do all of that. But being a model to them first and developing case study that will show them what they want to become will really help them. So maybe starting your class year, what are the, you can develop some reflective question like the one we had in the chapter 1, the core. Develop some of those reflective questions and make them reflect on it. And at the end of the semester, let them reflect back to it. Then you see that you will be able to help them. That's what I can say. That's one of the easier, fastest way to help them. But depending on the grade level student you are teaching, then that's, you could do that. But using case study is very helpful. Then the next person, this anonymous, what was your motivation towards writing this book? Yeah, so I think my motivation first, like I said, during the COVID era, when Steering for Greatness invited me to speak, and I just reflected, looking at my own life. I've done a lot of work with young people. I've been with the Red Cross 10 years. I was the coordinator, organizing youth camp for young people, and my own training as a transformative leader. And so at that point, when I saw the preacher, and people say, "Oh, you must write a book about it," and I felt that it was going to be very helpful, because the feedback that I got from the people about it, and also going around the world and seeing a lot of things happening with young people and young adults, and that was a motivation for me, that for myself, I see myself as a waterfall. I need to leave something to help people to change their life. Then there's a question on, what if one passion isn't connected to one's career? How does one find a balance in the midst of it? So I think that's the, because I don't know what people have taught people about that. They're saying that, oh, your passion is not your career. What we're saying is that once you find your passion, your purpose, and all of that, you can fit into any career. But your passion, you need to know it clearly. So even though, if at a particular time, when people think about passion, they think about maybe just being an entrepreneur and starting up a business and all of that, but that's not passion. It's what drives you at any point. So the way you align it first is that you know who you are. So even if you have a stopgap job that is not what you really want to do, you do not forget about your passion. But you still bring a cup of your passion. Like I said, a civil servant can be an entrepreneur. How do you bring government business? How do you make it more creative? How do you make it solution driven? And so that's one of the ways you can align it, knowing that what you have, then what you have at the moment, how do you process it? And I think in that chapter 1 of the core, and I talked about the likeness, the commitment, and the metrics, we dive deep a lot in it. So if you're able, I will encourage you to get it. It's going to break it more down to you. But first, know who you are, then you can fit into any career. You can take your passion with you into any career aspect. But knowing that is to change people's life and make this world a more better place, a global community where we can all live together. Back to you, Anna. I think we've
Okay,
answered
thank
all
you
the
so
questions
much
that we
for
had.
this amazing talk. It was a really great experience hearing you share about how to become a holistic person with, okay, I can feel your passion in this area, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and yeah. So thank you everybody too for coming. We appreciate, and we hope you go and become the ambassadors of change. Go with the compass and let it guide. Just spread the message. Yeah.
Yes, thank you,